Hey everybody, Matt here for AVC and welcome back to the shop. Today we wanted to talk to you a little bit about wall kit materials. With the introduction of our paper pattern, it brought up the question of what could we or what should we be building our wall kit from? So let's take a look at some of the options and talk about the pros and cons of each material. So before we jump into some of these specific materials here on the table, let's look at some of the qualities we're going to look for in a wall kit material. So the first thing we want to think about is weight. We want to make sure we select a material that's not too heavy for our camper van. Too much weight in our van is going to affect all sorts of different stuff. It's going to affect how the van handles, it's going to affect our vehicle performance as far as fuel economy, and realistically we just don't need a super burly wall kit because we're going to cover it up with fabric and with all of our cabinets, things like that. The next thing we want to think about is resistance to moisture. So do you live in the Pacific Northwest where it's going to be moist all year round? Or are you going to put an interior shower in your van that's going to maybe warp some kind of cheap plywood like this? We definitely want to consider how our materials are going to react to moisture and your specific use and build out. We also want to consider screw retention in our material. Are you going to be screwing all sorts of accessories to the walls of your van? If so, you want to make sure you choose a nice strong material that's going to hold those screws over bumpy washboard roads. We also want to consider flexibility of our material and warping. Now our vans are not perfect flat interiors, so we do want to have something that's going to allow it to contour to the van. But if it has too much flexibility in that material, like something like a plastic, it's going to expand and contract with heat, and it could warp and look like garbage after we put all of this work into making a nice wall kit. Another thing we want to consider is the appearance of the material itself. Now, if you're going to be wrapping it with foam and fabric, then we're not really as concerned with the appearance of the raw material itself. But going to something like Baltic Birch, we could actually add a clear coat to it and it could look really nice. Going with something like this Max Metal is already pre-finished, and so therefore it already looks finished. We have to do nothing to it. We can just cut it and install it. And going to something like plastic, although durable, is maybe not the aesthetic I'd be looking for in a van. And last of all is going to be cost. Now, all of these materials cost different amounts, and our camper vans can get extremely expensive. You probably know that if you're building your van yourself. But cost is always a consideration, and we don't want to spend money where we don't need to. So maybe you don't need a Baltic Birch material. You can go with something a little bit lighter weight or a little bit less expensive, and it's going to give you the same performance in the end. So with those details in mind, let's take a look at the materials that we like to use here at AVC. So let's start with the industry standard, and that's Baltic Birch. So Baltic Birch is a very strong and stable material. When it's in a 4x8 sheet, it's manufactured with an exterior grade glue, which means it's going to be very resistant to moisture. This material is not going to warp on us, and it has excellent screw retention. So if we want to attach things to the walls of our van, this is a really great and strong material. So this is a really great material. Everybody in the industry uses it for their professionally built camper vans, but it's pretty pricey. And when it's all fabriced up and covered, really, you might not be getting the maximum benefit from this material. So let's talk about some of the other options that we can substitute for Baltic Birch. So our first alternate is another wood product, and this is Underlayment. So the Underlayment that we have used in the past is manufactured by a company called Revolution Ply, and we picked this up at Lowe's. The reason I like this product from Revolution Ply is that it has a moisture barrier baked into it. So kind of like this Baltic Birch, we're not worried about moisture transmission through the material itself. The Underlayment is going to be much lighter weight than Baltic Birch, but it's also going to warp a lot more. So there's some pros and cons to this one. It is going to be much less expensive. So if you're looking to save some dollars on your kit at home, this is a really, really excellent material to select. I do recommend storing it flat because as it sits around or if you have it tilted up in your garage, it's going to be really wiggly and really warped. But once we wrap this material and install it in our van, it's going to fit the contours of our vehicle and it's going to stay there really well. This is actually a pretty good material to use for your ceiling because it actually contours to the ceiling really, really nicely. And some of those hard angles in a high roof 148 Transit are going to be really tough to get to model to the interior of the van. So we actually used to use this underlayment material for all of our wall kits here at AVC, and that was right when we were getting started. So I'd say the first 12 or so vans that we built here at AVC had an underlayment material for the wall kit. They work just fine. There's really no reason you need to go to Baltic Birch. We went to Baltic Birch just to have a more premium offering here at AVC. The one time that I actually still like to use this underlayment is if we're doing a pine tongue and groove ceiling. So a lot of people will just put furring strips up and attach their pine tongue and groove ceiling right to the van. I think that's a terrible idea. If you want to pull the ceiling down to do maintenance or do anything, you can't really do that because it's glued and screwed into your van. So we always attach our tongue and groove boards to some sort of substrate, and doing Luan is a really great solution for that. So these can be a really good alternate or really good substitute for Baltic Birch. Even if you're going to do a complete Baltic Birch wall kit, doing your ceiling, if you're doing that tongue and groove, you can do that out of Luan and it's going to let it contour a little bit easier. Now our next material we want to discuss is a non-wood product, and this is called Max Metal or Alu Panel. And really this is a composite material. It's got an aluminum skin with a high density polyethylene core. The material that I have here is 1/8 inch thick, but they also come in 1/4 inch thick. We use the 1/4 inch material for doors here at ABC. When I do sliding doors in a van, I like this stuff because it's never gonna warp on me at all. It's always super flat, which is really nice. I've used this 1/8 inch material for interiors of more like work vans and things like that. We've done a couple mobile bike shops here at the shop, and this is a really good material for that because they want something they can easily clean, that they're not worried about getting beat up with grease or anything like that. So in my opinion, this is a much more industrial type look, and it has its place in our industry. When we're using it for a work van or something like that, I think it's really great. There's no reason I would use this material and then wrap it with fabric. I just don't think we're gonna get the benefit, and we're not really having any cost savings compared to Baltic Birch. So if you're gonna wrap your panel kit or something like that, I'd stick with Birch and I wouldn't go for Max Metal. If you're going for the raw finished look, then Max Metal can be a really good solution. It comes in lots of different colors, and this one is a matte white and a gloss white. This one here is this kind of matte silver, and on the backside it's a brush silver. When we do a backsplash behind a kitchen, a lot of times we'll use this material because it's really nice and stable, cuts really easy on the CNC, and it's a nice finish. This is actually a sign material. So if you wanted to pick some of this up, you'd probably want to reach out to a local sign shop or a sign supplier and see if they can order some of this for you, and you can just buy it directly from them. Comes in, I think, a dozen different colors, and it's usually like one side has red and the other side has yellow or green and blue or whatever. And you can mix and match. So if you wanted something that's a pre-enameled finish, this can be a really cool option for you. The one drawback for this in a camper is going to be much louder. So just like doing a raw wood kit or a pine tongue and groove ceiling, you're gonna get a lot more echoing off of this material in the van compared to a fabric wrapped wall kit. So the last option we want to talk about is some sort of plastic or Coroplast or hexacomb material. So this one here in my right hand is the black hexagon plastic that comes in our Ford Transits. I see this actually complete in the van a lot less and less. Some of the lower panels are in this, but it's not often that I see the whole van finished in this black plastic. Back in like 2017, I saw a lot of Transits come out with this material, completely wrapping the interior, and I had a lot of customers ask if they should just wrap this with fabric rather than replacing it with a Baltic Birch wall kit. The main thing that I don't like about this is that it warps and expands and contracts a lot with heat. So if you have a nice wall kit and you spend a lot of time wrapping this in fabric and installing it in your van, you might come out in the middle of the summer and see that the walls have pillowed out because the material expanded so much that it's not gonna fit to the contour of the van. Now, it is a really inexpensive material and it does get the job done. So if you're not very picky and you're just looking for something that's good enough, this can definitely do it. Now, it has almost no screw retention. So if you're gonna try and attach like bags or something like that to the side of this, they're not gonna be very durable and they might just fall out over time. Now, this one in my left hand here is actually out of a Mercedes Sprinter. So we used to build some Sprinters here and we actually had some of this material hanging out in the shop. So I thought I'd grab it and talk to you about it. It looks like it's a plastic exterior, like a high density polyethylene exterior. It actually has a foam inner layer. I've never seen this from a material supplier or anything. So honestly, I don't know where you would actually pick this up, but every once in a while you'll see these things sold secondhand on Facebook Marketplace. And if you did, or if you're building a Sprinter or something like that, it could be a reasonable option for you to wrap and install on your vehicle. Now, the one piece of plastic I don't have here is called Coroplast. And you see those outside in people's front yards and stuff like that. Those are like the political signs, so those little plastic signs they put up outside. All those flutes are very linear, and so you can definitely pick those up. It's another sign material. You can pick them up at some like big box stores and stuff like that. It's another option that you could cut and wrap, but it's gonna do the same thing as this other Hexaply. It's gonna expand and contract a lot with heat. So here at ABC, we just don't recommend it, but it might be right for you and your budget. So these are all materials that you could reasonably use in your camper van, but there are some things that I just flat out would not use in my van to build my wall kit. The first thing I'll bring up is just like some crummy plywood from your big box store. A lot of their like 1/2 inch or even 1/4 inch plywood is full of knots and holes. It's really crummy material. It has almost no screw retention in it, and really it's just a big waste of time and money. When you get into cutting it and sanding it, things like that, I just think it's a bad decision and I don't recommend it. Going with something like a 3/4 inch cabinet ply or something like that, also, it would work, but man, it's gonna be so heavy in your van. I just don't think that's the right material either. Going with something like a Baltic Birch is gonna give you the same kind of strength in 1/3 of the thickness, and there's really no reason you would go with something like that 3/4. The other thing that I wouldn't recommend is just a straight up metal panel. So like an 040 aluminum or maybe 080 aluminum, that's like another sign material. It's just gonna be really expensive. It's not gonna really save you any money. It's not gonna save you any weight, anything like that. If you did wanna go with something like that 080 aluminum, I think Max Metal is gonna be a much better option for you. It's gonna be lighter weight, it's gonna bend and contour a little bit easier, and it's gonna be much cheaper and just better off for you. So there we have it. Those are some different options that you can use to build your wall kit in your camper van. Was there a material that we didn't bring up, or maybe something that you've used successfully in your van? We'd love to hear it. Let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.